All right. As we speak right now, it is the 22nd of February 2018. Welcome. All right. As we speak, listen to me right now. I'm coming right back at me. Welcome to Sapiostream. My name is Sidney Winston. You can ask an atheist, or you can ask Sidney Winston. Hi. Today we just continue on with my personal tribute to Thunderf00t for 10 years on the internet, 10 years on YouTube creating content, and specifically focusing on a series that he put together called Why Do People Laugh at Creationists? It's a 47-part series. None of them are more than about 10 minutes or so. And we have watched through several different individual segments. We've watched parts 1 through 36. And today we start with part number 37. It's interesting to note that part number 36 featured a Christian whose name is Evan Phillips. His handle, avatar on G+, I guess, or Google or whatever on social media, is Nephilim free, and that's, if you watch the previous segment, you'll notice that he was featured. Thunderf00t today, I believe, is going to feature another Christian, but one that has his story very, very well rehearsed. Nephilim free, was all over the place, didn't have a clue what he was talking about. Word salad, babble. On the other hand, we have William Lane Craig. Now, he's got his speech and his shtick and his delivery I've watched it practiced and honed. It's like there's two magicians. One is Nephilim free, the other one is William Lane Craig. Now, Nephilim free doesn't have that sleight of hand. He doesn't have that quickness. He doesn't have the slickness. He's not very polished as a magician, so you can kind of tell all the mistakes he makes. Whereas William Lane Craig, he's slick. His sleight of hand is practiced and perfected, and he doesn't miss a beat. So today, Thunderf00t is going to, I believe, have a look at what our friend William Lane Craig has to say, and hopefully rip him apart to shreds. So I'm actually quite excited about this, as you can tell, and I'm looking for a reason to sort of not really get into this, and I find none. So what I'm going to do is get the show going on the road, if I can actually find what I'm doing here. And yeah, let's do it.
Very good grounds for accepting the biblical worldview that the universe was created out of nothing by God at some point in the finite past. I'll share a classic argument for creation and unfold some of the philosophical and scientific support for its premises.
Premise 1. Whatever begins to exist has a cause.
Things don't come into being from nothing. 2. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And that would be an argument again for a transcendent creator of the universe.
And then you unpack what it is to be a cause of the universe in terms of timelessness, spacelessness, immateriality, and so forth. Now, in a deductive argument like that, if the premises are true, then the conclusion follows logically and inescapably, whether you like it or not.
Ooh, logically and inescapably. Wow, that's fantastic, Bill. I wonder what else I can prove with this William Lane Craig style philosophy. I know. How about logically and inescapably proving that Einstein was wrong about the speed of light? Premise 1. An object that is pushed forwards moves faster than it was moving. Premise 2. This can of Spam is an object. Therefore, it logically and inescapably follows that if this can of Spam is travelling at light speed and it's pushed forwards, it will move faster than the speed of light. And therefore, Einstein was wrong about things not being able to travel faster than the speed of light. And then you unpack what transwarp Spam speed must mean in terms of the only being that can move this transcendently fast must be the god Mercury, and that he must really like his Spam. Wow, did I just use a verbatim William Lane Craig style logical philosophy or whatever he calls it to disprove one of the most robust and well-tested theories of all time, a theory of one of the greatest physicists ever. And it was so easy, so simple. Oh, go on, you tell him, Craig.
And it certainly seems to be more probably true than its negation. So when you put it in the form of a deductive argument like that, I think that it's a good argument for that conclusion.
This argument is so marvelously simple that it's easy to memorize and share with another person. Moreover, this is a logically airtight argument. If the two premises are true, then the conclusion follows necessarily.
And sure, I could have used similar deductive reasoning to disprove quantum mechanics. That's the science of the very small, in a similarly airtight and necessary fashion. But there's a reason why the band's not getting ready to play, why the Nobel Prize Commission is not getting ready to roll out the red carpet. You see, there's a teensy problem with this deductive reasoning, Craig. And it goes a little something like this.
All elephants are pink. Nelly is an elephant. Therefore, Nelly is pink. Logical?
Perfectly.
You know what a human would say to that?
What?
Elephants aren't pink.
Humans do not understand logic.
Yep, that's right, Bill. If your premises are wrong, the deductions made from those premises will probably be wrong too. In science circles, it's called GIGO. Garbage in, garbage out. In order to understand why the Kalam cosmological argument is pointless hand-waving about an unknown, you need to understand why this William Lane Craig style disproof of relativity is wrong. Well, it's simple. It's taking inductive and intuitive and a seemingly valid pair of observations and assuming their universal validity and then linearly extrapolating them to places where they fail. Sure, every object you have ever come across, when pushed forwards, does move forwards faster every single time. As Craig would say, we have good reasons to believe that it's true, and you can find the formulas in any physics textbook, and it certainly seems more probable than its negation. Every object you have ever pushed moved faster, just as every event you've ever witnessed had a cause. But only when you understand the mathematics that accurately describes motion, and not before, will you understand why not everything pushed forwards moves faster. Speed of light's kind of a unique point like that, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb too much to say that the initial state of the universe was probably a similarly unique condition. The lesson is simple. Intuitive linear extrapolations into the very small, that's the quantum, and the very high energy, essentially the relativistic, are known to fail. Now let's take a look at the problem that Craig is trying to describe with his simplistic intuition. Oh yeah, that's right, the beginning of the universe. Pretty much the smallest and most high energy state you can think of.
All of the mass and all of the energy contained in all of the 400 billion galaxies we see in our universe in a region smaller than the size of a single atom. The entire observable universe was a millionth of a centimeter across at that time. Everything was compressed into an incredibly hot, dense region.
Look, we're not coming at this blind. We have precedent that intuition will serve you poorly in events that extrapolate to such singularities. Saying that
Whatever begins to exist has a cause.
is the same intuitive and inductive You tell them, Craig.
People are so unsophisticated in their thinking. I am just appalled, honestly, when I read the stuff that's out there on the internet, how inept and sophomoric people are.
Oh, steady, Tiger. I would have settled with just saying it's the same inept reasoning that would lead the inexperienced to erroneously believe that they have used Craig-style philosophy to disprove relativity, or to convince Davros that Nelly is pink. Look, Craig, there's a simple reason why the theory of relativity and not Craig-style deductive arguments are used to describe motion. Because one is a demonstrably accurate description of reality. In scientific terms, what we would call a theory. It can be robustly used time and time again to make accurate predictions of the unknown, while the predictions made by this pointless philosophical hand-waving can be shown to be wrong. As the old axiom goes, the proof of the pudding is in the predictivity. It's the ultimate standard by which we judge good models from bad ones.
Okay, so special relativity, the faster I go, the slower time is going to go.
Yes, relative to the clock left on the ground.
Okay, and general relativity, the further away I am from a massive object like a planet, the faster time is going to go.
That's right.
So which one of these is going to have the biggest effect on our time dilation experiment?
The bigger effect actually occurs due to the general relativistic effect.
And it said, for example, that time is actually going to run slower for somebody who's, say, standing on the surface of the Earth or where there's lots of gravity, relative to, say, somebody who's floating around on a spaceship where there's hardly any gravity at all. Now, you may think that this just sounds absolutely bonkers, but, for example, the satellites that control your car sat-nav wouldn't be able to work without taking relativity into account. I absolutely proved the thing. Not that it needed proving. I am categorically 230 nanoseconds older by taking that flight than I would have been if I'd stayed on the ground.
But let's just say for the sake of argument that we didn't understand relativity, just as we don't understand the beginning of the universe. At which point the comparison of these two arguments becomes perfectly analogous. Until you can demonstrate some accurate prediction of the unknown, everything that you do will remain pointless hand-waving about an unknown, about a gap of knowledge. And to be frank, until we have a satisfactory description of the beginning of the universe, as we have a satisfactory description of relativity, the origin, if even such a word is appropriate, of the universe will remain to be addressed by its fitting title as an unknown. And yeah, doubtless this is why Craig is here in the first place. The only place left for him to hide his God is in the gaps of human knowledge.
Everything science learns pushes God back. We used to see mystery everywhere and explain it with God, but now everything science explains, God gets smaller.
And the beginning of the universe is merely one of the last places he can still hope to hide his God in. You see, Craig, in years gone past, folks like you would have marvelled at the rainbow, saying, it says in the Bible that God made the rainbow because he felt guilt pangs after an act of global genocide. How else can you explain the rainbow? I mean, let's use inescapable philosophical reasoning to prove this. Premise 1, the Bible says the rainbow exists. Premise 2, rainbows actually exist. Conclusion, therefore the Bible is true. But joking aside, look, Craig, it's simple. There's a reason why quantum mechanics, relativity, refraction, and so on were mapped out by scientists, and not by intuitive hand-waving with your brand of logically and inescapably airtight philosophical reasoning. Science it works. So I guess that puts the ball back in Craig's court. Why, given the track record of intuitive reasoning's demonstrable failure in predicting the very small and the very high energy, do you think that such hand-waving as an unknown commodity, that is a gap of knowledge at the beginning of the universe, if beginning is even the right term to use, which is, let's be honest, as small and high energy as you like to get, will allow you to conclude, therefore God, with any more validity than pre-Einstein, it could have been used to validly conclude that faster than light speed travel is possible. Remember, Craig, it's garbage in, garbage out.
That the way in which I know Christianity is true is first and foremost on the basis of the witness of the Holy Spirit in my heart, and that this gives me a self-authenticating means of knowing that Christianity is true wholly apart from the evidence.
Sure, God can perform a miracle and stop the sun. How many times has he done that? Only once in history. So I have a reasonable expectation that the sun will come up, but the unbeliever has actually zero expectation that the sun will come up, because theirs is based on a viciously circular argument.
I think you actually mean that he stopped the Earth from rotating, not he stopped the sun.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's a technicality.
But yeah, it's a technicality that shows how demonstrably stupid what you just said was. And it comes in 3 tiers, saving the best for last. Tier 1. The Earth rotates, well, once in 24 hours. That means in a day, in this frame of reference, if you were standing on the poles, you haven't moved at all. However, if you're on the equator, that means that you've moved about 24,000 miles in 24 hours. That's about 1,000 miles an hour, give or take half of that at the temperate latitudes where Si says these people were when God stopped the Earth. Now, people tend not to notice that 500 miles an hour because the Earth is rotating with them. However, if someone were to stop the Earth, as Si says is technically correct, then you would notice that 500 miles an hour very quickly indeed. I mean, just to give you a little perspective on this, the US performed a test of a phantom jet hitting a wall used for a nuclear reactor at 500 miles an hour to test its physical properties. Yep, Si, I think if God did technically stop the Earth, as you said, it would have been a far more effective way and a far quicker way of wiping out life on Earth than that flood thing. Tier 2. But to truly stop the sun in the sky, you also need to stop the Earth in its orbit, and this is where the numbers get really silly. You see, the Earth orbits the sun at some 30 kilometers per second, but let's deal in multiples of the speed of sound, just for convenience. When technically the Earth stops rotating, that means that everyone at the temperate latitudes will all of a sudden be doing this, but at about 10 times faster. That's at about the speed of sound. Or this if they actually manage to hit a wall. The guys on the North and South Pole, of course, won't even notice, but hey. However, if the Earth stops in its orbit, that means that everyone on this side of the Earth will fly off into space at about 90 times the speed of sound. At that speed, you would clear the atmosphere in about 3 seconds, and those will be the lucky ones. The guys on the trailing edge of the Earth would form some fairly convincing craters filled with something along the lines of chunky salsa in about 60 microseconds. Give or take, that's about 1,000 times faster than you can blink your eye. But let's just ignore the ballistics for a second here and say that God somehow magically enabled the inertial dampers.
Inertial damper is failing. We're losing attitude control.
And remind ourselves why God was doing this. Joshua therefore came upon them suddenly and went up from Gilgal all night. And the Lord discomfited them before Israel and slew them with great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them a long way up that goeth to Bethron, and smote them to Azekal, and unto Makkedah. Yep, that's right, Joshua is killing people for his God. And it came to pass, as they fled before Israel, and were going down to Bethron, that the Lord cast great stones from heaven on them unto Azekah, and they died. There were more which died with hailstones than they who died of Israel slew with the sword. Yep, that's right. God manages to kill more than the Israelites through the inspired military and technological genius of throwing rocks at them.
Oh, Leo, we haven't started yet.
Rocks. Then spake Joshua unto the Lord in the day, when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, and thou still upon Gibeon, and thou, moon, in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jashar? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hastened not to go down about a whole day. Now, Inara, tell us something interesting about people.
We're fragile creatures. It takes less than a pound of pressure to cut skin.
Even Darth Vader understood a thing or two about the efficiency of force.
Enough to find the rebels' hidden fort.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Enough of this. Vader, release him.
As you wish.
However, God, having failed to slaughter enough people by throwing rocks at them, for him to then stop the Earth in its orbit such that Joshua can continue with this bloody slaughter has got to be the most inefficient application of military force ever. And this is the third tier. I mean, just to convey how utterly strategically stupid this is a Saturn V rocket. It's about 500 tons, 450 of which are fuel. And that could get several tons to the moon and return about 1% of that mass, that's about 5 tons, to Earth. Now, rocket fuel has about the same energy density as high explosive. And in a perfectly efficient system, it turns out that to stop 1 ton of the Earth in its orbit, that is to take it from 90 times the speed of sound and stop it dead, requires about 100 tons of high explosive. Oh yeah, there's a lot of energy in the Earth orbiting the Sun. The practical upshot is for God to stop the Earth in its tracks, as Sai thinks he did. He expended about the same energy as 100 times the Earth's mass in high explosives. And this is directly after the verse where God is trying to kill these people by throwing stones at these fleeing people. And even at that, he only manages to kill slightly more people than the bloodthirsty mob of religious savages perpetrating their religious genocide. Interestingly enough, though, while Sai has no problem with this barbaric slaughter in the name of his religion, he seems to think that when others do it, it's some great evil.
But let's say there's a religion that says flying planes into buildings is right. I'm not making that up. Is that right?
There's no religion that says that, sir.
Don't you remember 9/11? You were around.
I was definitely around.
Don't you think that they were killing the infidels by flying those planes into the buildings?
Well,
don't you think that the Quran told them to do that? It's not some internet cell group that told them to do that. It's the Quran that told them.
If you talk to any Muslim, they'll say that terrorists have used their religion or have used religion to pervert their ideas.
And those Muslims are not adhering to the truth of the Quran because you're supposed to kill the infidels.
And you're not adhering to the truth of the Bible.
What is the truth?
And the Lord discomfited them before Israel, and slew them with great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Bethron. The projection of Sai here is incredible, in that he sees that others killing for their religion is bad, but he thinks that those killed by the followers of his religion were actually dispensing an absolute justice when they engaged in this bloody slaughter.
Now, the more difficult problem is the children. How could God command that the children be killed because these are innocent?
I mean, even in the Bible, it's not God that picks up the sword and plunges it through the living flesh of children until they die from the extreme physical trauma. It's the believers that do that. It's the Sai and the Eric Hovens of their day.
Let me just tell you something. For hundreds and thousands of years, this kind of discussion would have been in most places impossible to have, or Sam and I would have been having it at the risk of our lives. Religion now comes to us in this smiley face, ingratiating way, because it's had to give so much ground, and because we know so much more. But you've no right to forget the way it behaved when it was strong, and when it really did believe that it had God on its side.
Tell me, Sai, if you had been part of Israel's army, slaughtering the children for God, what is the best way to kill a 10-year-old girl for God? A terrified 10-year-old shaking with fear at the blood-curdling screams of the other children being slaughtered, begging for her life, pleading to be spared, tears streaming down her cheeks, pleading not to be killed like her mom and dad, as mommy and daddy's blood drip from your sword. A child sobbing that I just want to live. Now, current leading Christian theologians.
We have the privilege to interview Dr. William Lane Craig, a first-rate intellectual that is regarded by many as one of the greatest defenders of the Christian faith of our time.
Are quite clear on this matter, that it would be absolutely immoral to spare the life of this child.
And I think you can make sense of this through a divine command morality, which says that our moral duties are constituted by God's commands, so that when He issues commands to us, these become our moral duties. Moreover, if you believe, as I do, in the salvation of infants or children who die, what that meant was that the death of these children meant their salvation. They were the recipients of an infinite good as a result of their earthly phase of life being terminated.
So really, anyone who endorses this sort of slaughter, as in the Bible, as a moral action.
There had to be another solution. The solution was to kill the children. And what did God do? What did he accomplish in doing so? Well, a military strategy that was successful.
Those who believe that killing a helpless child for your God is a moral act, indeed that you are blessing this child with an infinite good by terminating its earthly phase of life. Tell me, what is the absolutely moral, biblically correct way to slaughter a helpless child begging for her life? The moral standard that can only come from a biblical worldview.
I show that the basis of morality must be from the God of Scripture.
Would you stab her in the face? Would you cut her throat? Stab her in the side of the head? Stab it through the back? Disembowel her and let her die slowly? And after you've inflicted the mortal wounds and the life fades from her terrified eyes, do you feel joy knowing that in terminating this girl's earthly phase of life, you are blessing this girl with an infinite good? These are the actions of believers in the Bible. Actions supported and endorsed as absolutely moral, as proof that God exists because they're so absolutely moral, of modern Christian theologians. And when the terrified screams of the helpless children being massacred grew less, and eventually silence fell over the bloodbath, good, God-fearing men, full in the knowledge that whatever God said was just, with a smile on their face and a tune in their heart that they had delivered this infinite good to so many children, wiped the blood from their swords. If you can justify this as good, is there anything left to call evil?
Now, you guys have provided and equipped so many individuals and so many churches with the ability to defend their faith. You guys have a creation museum with literally hundreds of thousands of people coming and learning the truth. What all are you guys doing?
5 years since the Creation Museum has been open. It was opened in 2007. And so it's 5.5 years now. We've had 1.7 million people, over 1.7 million people come through the Creation Museum.
Well, actually, it's a fairly special week for me too. You see, the Thunderf00t channel might be a couple of years older than the Creation Museum, but it's also had a little bit more than 1.7 million visitors. Indeed, this month, the Thunderf00t channel passed 50 million video views. And with that, I give you Why Do People Laugh at Creationists, Part 39. You know, one of the dilemmas of people who believe that the Bible is the truth, no matter what reality has to say on the matter.
The best evidence, you can look at all that science, the best evidence of Noah's flood is God's Word. He has revealed to us there really was a worldwide flood.
Is in Noah's flood, how on a planet whose entire surface has been underwater for about a year.
That there was a global flood at the time of Noah's day. And so all the life on the land was destroyed except those on Noah's Ark. And Noah's Ark landed in the Middle East, and the animals and people got off the Ark.
That is, it killed off all of the trees, all of the plants, leaving the planet entirely dead. Do you manage to, say, for instance, get all of the kangaroos and koalas back to Australia? That's almost halfway round the world, across this almost lifeless and therefore food-free landscape. I mean, just to put this all into perspective, if Noah had a decent airplane with all of the infrastructure to run it at his disposal, it would still take him about 10 hours just to fly to Australia to drop off the koala bears before coming back. Well, Conservapedia, that's the trustworthy encyclopedia, has an explanation for how these animals might have gotten this far. And that's that there are volcanoes in the Mount Ararat region that could have thrown small animals great distances. Specifically, it says, the post-Noachian flood volcano theory comes from the example of Krakatoa, which in 1883 erupted and destroyed most of the island, thus remaining lifeless for many years. Still, the same life that was there before the eruption eventually came back. It's possible that volcanoes in the Mount Ararat region were able to transport the smaller animals over much greater distances than the animals could get by just walking. Now, bear in mind what I just told you. If you were to fly to Australia in an airplane just below the speed of sound, it still takes you about 10 hours. So in this creationist model, to get the small fluffy animals to Australia, all the velocity must be given to the animal during launch, and the rest of the 6,000-mile journey will be an unpowered, that is, a ballistic trajectory. Now, there are three problems with this. The first is exploding volcanoes tend to kill everything. For instance, this is just what a half-atmosphere pressure wave will do to someone.
Blast injuries to exposed personnel, represented by this dummy, is usually severe over 3 psi. Here it was 6 psi.
And notice that the person here only travels a few feet, and this blast would have likely caused him serious injury or killed him. That is, a volcanic eruption that is capable of transporting small animals further than they could get by just walking is also likely to turn them inside out. Fluffy animals or not, they are not going to survive the launch. I mean, damn, the volcanic eruption they cite, Krakatoa, devastated and killed everything. It did not result in small fluffy Sumatran animals raining down in Singapore. The second problem is the ballistic trajectory that you would need to follow to get further than you can get by just walking, say for instance from the Middle East to Australia. And maybe the easiest way to put this into perspective is the V2 rocket. This was the first man-made machine to get into space, the first man-made object to take pictures of the Earth from space.
The huge projectile drops the Earth behind at the tremendous speed of 4,000 feet per second. The rotation of the rocket causes the planet to spin before the lens, and the camera photographs the Earth 65 miles straight down. The horizon, 720 miles away, and the curvature of the Earth are astonishingly apparent in this still picture from the film. An observer in the rocket could have seen San Diego, Salt Lake City, Kansas City, and San Antonio.
And it only had a range of a couple of 100 miles. And that really isn't in the league of being able to transport animals further than they could get by just walking. And it was about a minute-long burn, and then it stayed on this unpowered, that is, a ballistic trajectory. However, the ballistic trajectory that would take you from the Middle East to Australia will mean that you will spend about 1 hour in space. Now, I don't think I'm going out on too much of a limb when I say most of the Australian wildlife can't survive an hour without oxygen, let alone an hour in the vacuum of space. The third problem that you come to is the landing. Indeed, most of the V2s free-falling from space were supersonic on impact. Now, small fluffy animals, of course, have a lot more air resistance and so would hit the ground considerably slower, but nonetheless, they have to survive the free fall from space. Now, this guy was weak. Not only did he jump from only about 40 kilometers rather than the 100 or so needed for the ballistic trajectory to get you from the Middle East to Australia, but he also had a parachute. Now, I've got to admit, I don't know that much about animal husbandry, but it does occur to me that the creationist proposal about the post-flood dispersal of critters does seem to ignore some rather critical factors about the survivability of animals. For instance, the volcanic eruption is more likely to fry your funnel webs rather than give them safe transit halfway around the world. Or that an hour or so without oxygen will not do your koala bears much good.
See, dinosaurs on the ark, they're kind of big, aren't they? Well, the big ones were big, but the little ones were little. And Noah was 600 years old when he went on that boat. I just bet he was smart enough to figure out you don't have to bring the biggest ones. Bring 2 babies.
Or similarly, I don't think that a baby kangaroo that has managed to survive being hit by an explosion that would fire it further than it could get by walking, and has managed to somehow hold its breath for the hour or so long trip, and somehow managed to survive being in a rather hostile vacuum of space. Free falling from the edge of space is going to give you a healthy kangaroo population in Australia. Now, I know kangaroos are fairly bouncy creatures, but I really don't think that rolling your knees when you land is the sort of thing that is going to make you survive the free fall from space. But the trustworthy encyclopedia isn't done there, for its article on Australia says, contrary to that, young Earth creation scientists assert that the entire subset of all of the Earth's species of kangaroos, wallabies, and other similar creatures travelled together to Australia following the Great Flood. It's not known whether they communicated the idea amongst themselves or all went the same way by chance. Yeah, the Wallabies and such like embarked on a 6,000-mile journey across a dead Earth. And while they were not able to thrive anywhere on the 6,000-mile journey, somehow managed to prosper happily in Australia when they ended up, and only in Australia. I guess maybe the Galapagos tortoises went with them and just communicated amongst themselves that they would swim the last 12,000 miles. Oh, it's nice to know that we've got Conservapedia to let us know what creation scientists are thinking.
This is the time for atheists to rise and shine, to show all of us Christians why we should take you seriously, to show us that you can actually defend what you believe. I want you to give me an answer. So, here's the question. Was your brain intelligently designed? Obviously, atheists will claim that no, their brain was not intelligently designed. So, doesn't that raise a few red flags for you? I mean, if you want to claim that your brain was not intelligently designed, then shouldn't your entire belief system come into question?
So was my brain intelligently designed? Well, it's evolutionary design. Sit down, son. Let me explain. You see, in the wide world there are these things called genetic replicators. And sadly, those genetic replicators, life as we call it, can't copy themselves perfectly. And so there are slight differences between the parents and the offspring. Secondly, regrettably, the environment is such a harsh place that many of them die before they get a chance to replicate. This inevitably means that those that are better suited to the environment have a better chance of replicating. Evolution, in this sense, is just a statement of the bloody obvious. That is, you see more replicators that are suited to the environment because they can survive and reproduce better in that environment. In simple terms, we would describe the genes of the population as a gene pool. We would simply say that the factors of imperfect replication and environmental attrition result in the gene pool being plastic to the environment. So from this, you can see that evolution can quite happily give the appearance of the gene pool being designed for the environment because the gene pool is plastic to the environment. Now, for many multicellular organisms, one of the factors that determines survivability is a rudimentary level of predictivity. And that is, say for instance, an organism that can watch others fall off a cliff to their deaths and work out that falling off cliffs is bad would have a distinct survival advantage in an environment with lots of cliffs. One of the better examples of this on the planet is the human brain. One of the purposes that it serves is as a rudimentary future predictor. That is, it can form models of the world that have utility in their ability to make predictions. And even that imperfect ability is still a bloody good survival characteristic. It's fairly rudimentary though. And you only have to imagine what your understanding of the world would look like if you hadn't been given access to a first world education, and if you hadn't been allowed access to the combined and best knowledge gained by the smartest minds of mankind over the past few hundred years, just to get a feel of your native abilities. I couldn't have figured out a tiny fraction of what I currently know if I wasn't able to read the minds of the smartest dead people around. But because we can, we have seen further than many of them could have even dreamed. So yes, the human brain is a moderately sophisticated temporal extrapolator that is the current generation of a still running evolutionary routine that gives the appearance of design.
Obviously, atheists will claim that no, their brain was not intelligently designed. So, doesn't that raise a few red flags for you? I mean, if you want to claim that your brain was not intelligently designed, then shouldn't your entire belief system come into question?
So no, it's not an intelligent design. It's an evolutionary design. And because of that, you can mostly trust it. Because what has been selected for is something that does have a rudimentary predictive understanding of the universe, or truth, as you would call it. That is, what has been selected for is something that could be trusted when it comes to decision making in the environment. And this is the same for many of the other brains of other animals on the planet. And that's the reason you don't see many organisms doing really, really stupid things. Because natural selection's kind of good at filtering that sort of thing out. So in summary, I guess this question of is your brain intelligently designed is about as much of an atheist's nightmare as a banana. It's kind of like this question.
You believe that hydrogen, a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas, can turn into people, give or take 14 billion years.
Don't you just love it when these people try and talk science? I mean, isn't the sun mostly hydrogen? It doesn't look very colourless to me. And I'm pretty sure it would taste like burning. Let's ignore that for the moment and just take hydrogen as the colourless, odourless, tasteless gas. When mixed with our atmosphere, it can turn into water in about a millisecond, never mind billions of years. And this creates water. And water, in case you didn't notice, can become part of you in the time it takes to swallow. And yes, as we speak of the atoms that make up your body, about 2/3 of them are hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe.
You believe that hydrogen, a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas, can turn into people, give or take 14 billion years. And so your thought process is simply the outworking of the laws of physics and chemistry.
Yeah, that's right. It is the laws of physics and chemistry.
You're like a pop can that was shaken up and you happen to fizz atheistically, while most people happen to fizz theistically.
But all of us fizz, as you put it, chemically. That's the reason why you have to breathe about 20 times a minute. It's because it's a requirement to keep, how do you describe it? Fizzing? And yes, the reason that soft drinks are fizzy and the reason you have to breathe have the same physical origin. That is, they are both all about gases dissolved in water.
And so your thought process is simply the outworking of the laws of physics and chemistry.
I mean, if you really don't believe in biochemistry on this level, then please, by all means, be the first to show us that a man doesn't need to breathe to keep living. Or fizzing, as you call it. Just bear in mind that natural selection historically hasn't been a great fan of humans who decided they didn't need oxygen to run the energy economy of their body and allow their neurons to function. That is, to allow them to think. Let me translate that into creationese. Humans require air to fizz, and without it, they go flat. There are other subtle clues to the fact that you are, like every other mammal on this planet, a biological reactor. Usually most people have noticed after the first 20 years or so that you have a need to cram suitable organic matter into one orifice and then, after a suitable amount of time, squeeze it out of another. Because you are a biological reactor. Without a couple of 100 grams of suitable organic matter and about a kilo, that's about 2 pounds of oxygen, you will stop fizzing, as you call it. Now, yeah, it's true that the neurons are wired differently in different brains. That is, different brains have some differences. I'll give you that completely. So, for instance, when I was first confronted with this aggregate knowledge of mankind, my first thought was, dear God, what a fantastic opportunity to climb to the top, to stand on the shoulders of the giants and to see further than anyone has ever seen before. And my hard work in climbing that mountain has been rewarded with an insight into the universe you couldn't even begin to fathom. I feel the earth move under my feet. I see the universe from the subatomic to the intergalactic. I see processes from billionths of a second to billions of years. I see the history of the hydrogen that makes up some 2/3 of the organism that is currently making this video. And I dare to hope where they may go in the next billion years. And because of the wonders that I know you will never see, I pity you. I pity people like you who had this amazing opportunity. People who had won this golden ticket to see the wonders of the universe, an opportunity that few in the history of mankind have ever had. And you willingly turned it down, instead being happy with the fireside stories of some pre-Dark Age goat herders about things like killing people for picking up sticks on the wrong day of the week, and dipping your toes and fingers in ears in blood because it was the wishes of some guy who claimed to talk to a god whose description sounds remarkably like a volcano. Dear God, you have wasted your life. I beseech you, as someone who has stood on top of the mountain, do not waste the rest of it.
Good one. He's getting better at this. You know, I've been watching. I've been watching these videos since obviously section number 1, and he started them 10 years ago, and I think this one that we're about to start watching was not 10 years ago. It was 4 years, 4 years ago. So I think his you know, software is obviously gotten better. However, today is going to be, or right now, is going to be the end of this section, I think. So we're going to pick it up at number 41 next time. So this one will be through 41, and we will leave it at that. Now, before we leave, I want to go through what's coming once this series is finished. There are only 6 or 7 to go now. And when that is finished, which should be soon, I want to do a little bit more of I don't know whether it's education, entertainment, or satire when you question the Trinity, or when you point out the stupidity of Christianity. But I'm going to go into that. That's one of the topics that I want to tackle, maybe over a few segments, possibly not contiguous, you know, probably here and there, maybe, I'm not sure. However, topic number 2 is John Gisela. We are going to feature you. We're going to maybe make you famous for being the fakest of the fake Jews in the history of fake Jews. Also, we're going to have a good old laugh and an exposition of Chabad.org. Scammer, scammer, scammer. Give me money. That's what they are. And also, they are really good at replicating that sort of clown uniform look, you know, with a black hat and the jacket and the beard and the talk and the accent and the schicheling, and it's gonna be great. I hope to gleefully bring you as much as I can to expose this Chabadnik, or the whole Chabad organization, really, for being just a sleazy, money-grabbing bunch of sleazy money grabbers. That's 2 topics. There was a third. I might have mentioned it at the beginning of the video. I've kind of forgotten what it is. I'll probably remember, and hopefully I'll bring it up next time. Having said that, I'll go and check the YouTube. Oh yeah, I'm going to show you. I had set up. There we go. I had set up this the YouTube chat, as you can tell. As I look at the statistics, I see there's 2 people. Well, there's 2 viewers Can't tell. Excuse me. Can't tell that anyone's really watching. But I do this every time, and maybe people didn't know. But if you want to engage through the YouTube chat, well, you can do it. We can do it online. We can do it live. So if not this time, then of course, you know, next time. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to slide out. I'm going to say thank you for watching. Sydney Winston, thank you for watching Sapiostream. Thank you for supporting Ask an Atheist. Thank you for subscribing. I'd really like you to subscribe. Tell your friends. Share this video. Salute Thunderf00t because he's awesome. And thank you again for watching.